Welcome to the Nerd Social. I'm Nathan.
And I'm Condra.
Hi, so we're going to talk about the second episode of Star Trek Discovery this evening, Star Trek Discovery Season 4, which is entitled Anomaly. As always, we are going to go through our spoiler free thoughts for the episode, and then we'll get into spoiler talk about the episode. But before that, I want to read a short summary of the episode. So, Saru returns to help the U.S.S. Discovery uncover the mystery of an unusual destructive new force. As Burnham leads the crew, she must also find a way to help Book cope with an unimaginable loss. So, Condra, what did you think of this episode, spoiler free, this week?
Oh gosh. I think some of the predictions we had last week about the impact this anomaly would have on the Federation and its relationships with like non-federated or planets in general, we see those sort of come to fruition, and just the complexity that something like this, an unknown like this, the issues that it brings up. So that was, it was interesting to see, and just dealing with the trauma of losing an entire planet, right, full of life. So, and this episode, more so than the first, was also a tearjerker. I found myself tearing up throughout. It was very emotional. And sorry about that if you can hear my
No
dogs.
worries.
But but yeah, you're starting to see the response to this anomaly, and of plans start to form, and then working through it, and I'm trying to figure things out. So it was very emotional, a bit of a roller coaster, and you don't really get much of a resolution at the end.
Yeah. Yeah, I enjoyed the episode. I mean, as much as you can enjoy something that's like you said
Right.
is this
Yeah.
emotional. I think it's a really good episode. If you are one of those people who complain about the fact that this version of Star Trek leans into the emotion and actually has the actors do a lot of work in that area, because there are people who complain that, I don't know, Michael Burnham is crying all the time, you won't like the episode. But I don't know why you're still watching 4 seasons in, maybe just to complain complain about that, because that's what the show is. They lean into the emotion. They don't act like automatons. And this is a very emotional episode. You imagine that it should be, because at the end of the last episode, uh, Book lost a lot of his. Well, he lost his entire planet. So there's a lot of emotion here. I think David Ajala as Book does a very excellent job in this episode. He's acting is behind behind off to show the the depths of the despair of this character. Sonequa Martin Green is also very good in this episode, but I'm not going to get into but Anthony Rapp as Stamets is also very good in this episode. How he plays a role in this episode is a bit too spoilery, but he does a
But you see his growth, right? His
yeah
continued emotional
yeah
maturity
yeah
growth in this episode.
yeah. So he's really good in this. I think it's probably one of his best episodes, and he's had some really good ones. When they give him something to do, he always delivers, and you can really show he really he was really good in this episode. See, think of anything else to highlight that's spoiler free. Yeah, I mean, as the summary says, we're examining or looking into the anomaly that gave us that really terrible cliffhanger at the end of the last episode. So that's what most of the episode is focused on, and yeah, and you definitely should go see it if you like Discovery. But I think to talk about this more, we have to jump into spoilers. So I am going to say right now, if you haven't seen it, go see it. and then rejoin the conversation. So, spoiler alert. All right, so we can jump through. Actually, you know what? I was going to say we can jump through this in a different way, but either character by character. But actually, I forgot that I actually have screenshots set up, so we actually have to do it in chronological order because the screenshots are in chronological order. So we start off the episode with Burnham trying to console Book, and he's basically dead-eyed, as you might imagine, right? It kind of, the beginning of this episode actually starts with him obsessing over the images that his ship recorded,
The falling
the falling
birds, yeah.
birds, and he's zooming back and forth, and then Burnham comes in to try to console him, and he's just like, he's completely out of it, as you might expect, right? He doesn't really move between. Yeah, he's just he's numb, right?
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's a huge loss, right? Like how you can't conceive of how that would feel. Like everybody, he didn't just lose his family, right? But he lost a planet where, I mean, the people of this world are very connected to the planet and all of the organisms on it. So I feel it's just like loss upon loss
Yeah,
upon loss, and he was just starting to reconnect with his family and reconnect with Quajon, and to have that just, he literally just saved them, right? And now all of that is gone. And thinking about that, I mean, I guess that maybe there's some small comfort in knowing that they were reconnecting, right? And he didn't leave his relationships. He didn't, they were finding their way back and weren't still having, what the dispute that they were having.
right.
So, but yeah, no, that's an unimaginable thing to go through, really.
Yeah, I imagine that there's some small comfort in the fact that he was reconnecting, but also that actually adds to his anguish as well. Like, I mean, he lost his familial connections, but like as you said, his entire planet. So like the entire history of his planet, all the cultures. I mean, we saw one culture, but we're not a in Star Trek. In Star Trek, the planets tend to be cultural. Until
Yeah.
recently, they started to show different aspects of cultures on the same planet. Like within Star Trek Picard, we started to see that they're northern Romulans, southern Romulans, and then we have the Quilla Malats. So there are different cultural things there. So and in actual reality, there would be multiple cultures on his planet, all in multiple histories, all lost. So yeah, it's a loss that's difficult to conceive in the human mind. So I guess the way that he's playing it, David Ajala, like just numb like this, it makes sense. I mean, there's the personal things that he's connected to, but yeah, there's
Yeah.
difficult to calculate the loss here. So we get after this scene. Get after this scene a reunite
Reunion
reunion,
with that
yeah,
sir.
reunion with Saru. So he comes back to the Discovery to help out with the anomaly, and he actually comes in. Instead of taking on the command of a ship, he decides to become the first officer here. So, what did you think of this development? The fact that he came back and he decided to be first officer. I mean,
I think it's a little strange, but I also think it's a good thing. They work well together as a team. They know each other. There's a lot of there's mutual respect, and they've been through difficult situations before. I wonder though, um, I guess for Saru in terms of a future with the Federation, if maybe this would look um, a little like he's not. ready. But I think I guess it did strike me as odd, but I see it because this is, it's a really big thing, and they don't know yet what it is and what they're looking at, what they're
Mm-hmm.
fighting. So I think in that sense, for now, it makes sense to sort of bring the team back together, and then maybe when they can formulate a strategy, if they're still willing to have him captain a ship, do that. But I think it makes perfect sense to have that to bring him back as number one.
I think it makes sense well, it makes sense in the structure of the show because they want they want this character to be on the ship. It sort of makes sense. I mean, like in the history of Star Trek, they've had two captains in on the ship before. So like once they started to get into the movies, Spock was promoted to captain, but
Hmm.
he had to be in the movie, right? So like Picard would be an admiral, and then Spock would be on the Spock would be on the ship as the second in command, even though he was a captain, and then Picard, sorry, not Picard, then Kirk was actually
Yeah. Okay.
Captain Kirk was reduced from admiral to captain, so they were both captains on the ship, but he stood in as his number one because there was a specific mission that they were trying to accomplish. So it's not unprecedented, but it was
Yeah.
also it's obvious that they just wanted the character to be on the in the show,
Sure.
so at some point I don't know what they're going to have to do something to address this, and maybe there'll be another spinoff. I don't know. Maybe there'll be a spinoff. I forget the name of the ship that she said that he was assigned to, or he
The Sojourner.
the Sojourner. Yeah, maybe there'll
Yeah.
be a Star Trek Sojourner. I don't I don't know.
Yeah.
But I don't think that they can go into like season five with
Right.
still being on the ship and him being a
Yeah.
captain.
Yeah. I agree.
He there that raises the question: who do you think will be the first officer after he leaves? Who do you think will take over? I mean,
Um,
Tilly is is not a ensign anymore, but they can't do that again.
no.
So they have to this year spend some time bulking up,
Developing.
developing everyone
Yeah.
else on the thing, and I think that we saw a little bit of that during this episode. We see it. So Reese we saw in the first episode in the captain's chair. So he's obviously
Mhm.
the next in command because she was off she was off the ship and he took the command of the ship. But we've seen the least out of Reese. We saw a little bit more from Bryce this week.
We did.
We
Yeah.
mostly have gotten some development with Owo and Detmer.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but it has to be I guess one of them. We've had a little. I guess no, actually we've had the least with Nielsen because Nielsen, the actress who plays Nielsen, was Arium for the first half of like, or sorry, first like season one,
Uh,
and they swapped her out for someone else before they killed off Arium. So she
mhm.
was able to continue with the show because they recast the person that they actually killed off. But we don't really know anything about Nielsen. We know very little about Bryce as well. But so it's one of those people who will be the number one. But they have to spend some time developing those characters because right now they're still sort of focusing on Tilly, which is fine,
Mhm.
and Adira, which is fine, but Adira has an even lower rank than Tilly, so she
Yeah.
so they're not
Yeah.
going to be number one. So I
No.
don't know who's going to take over, but I guess we'll see. All right, so we get a scene. It's in Star Trek. Sorry, I keep doing this. It's Starfleet Academy. Starfleet headquarters, where they actually do a debrief on the anomaly, and it's I think 5 light years um, um, wide, and it's two black holes. So they go and they venture out to gather some data on the anomaly, and they want to go in, well, towards the not actually into the black folds, but close to the event horizons. And their the issue is that there's going to be a lot of shearing stress on the ship. So
Mm-hmm.
the suggestion is that they send in Bookship, which can transform
Right.
and adapt to the stress. Of course, they don't want to send Book because, as we were saying at the top, he's dealing with an unimaginable loss. But Book definitely wants to go because he wants
Yes.
to figure out what happened to his planet, and he's rather insistent about it. And Michael doesn't know what to do in this situation because she wants to support him, but she also, doesn't want to put the crew at risk.
Yeah.
And we, but so we jump to, um, we jump to the sick bay where Gray with Adira is checking out the new body. This is also pretty. There's also a cut from Picard. So apparently Gray is going to get an android body,
Yes. Yeah.
and they're using some of the same technology from 800 years ago. But
It doesn't to have been perfected or advanced, right? Because the doctor makes the comment that it was too unreliable.
yeah,
Like nobody could really get it to work consistently, and so it's just not done. And yet, I'm guessing this is still the best option
um,
to put Gray back in a
I
body,
think that I think
which
there's
is
probably
yeah,
other options, but this is probably the best option to actually have a body as opposed to making Gray a hologram,
yeah,
which
that's
is
what I
I
mean.
guess another option, but to give
Mhm.
Gray an actual body, like a corporeal body, as opposed to Gray being a projection, I think this is
Right.
probably the best option. But yeah, it
Yeah.
seems like the Picard, they haven't established in the last 800 years the Picard method for cheating death. I think it
Right.
worked. It worked that one time, and maybe they got it to work some other times, but it's not something that they employ on a regular basis. But the explanation here is that Gray's already survived a transfer, so the likelihood of the transfer working is more like is higher here. So that's how they're explaining it here. So.
Which I don't particularly get. I feel like I guess we don't even understand how Adira is still able to uh,
Communicate directly with.
communicate with
Yeah,
Gray, right? So, like, what the mechanism for this
yeah,
transfer is, and I don't think it would be the same as transferring that consciousness
yeah.
into an android, but
You gotta
uh,
assume that the
I'll
I mean,
go with
yeah,
it.
you
I'll let
gotta. I
you
mean, a bunch of this is just suspension of disbelief. But like, yeah, the
right.
mechanism by which the symbiotes have evolved the ability to hold on to the memories of
Hmm.
previous hosts probably developed over the course of millions of years, and it's not the binary way that data is transferred
Right.
in a computer or an android. So now,
Yeah.
I will say that even back to data, they said that he has a neural net, and I don't know that he's actually running on ones and zeros. So it might be some sort of closer to the way that our nervous system works, the way that his data is stored.
Hmm.
So maybe it's closer to organic.
Right. But they also mentioned because I think Gray says he hopes he can be a host
Yeah,
again.
that was a bit of a jump. Like they haven't improved the transfer process, but they've improved the android. It's because that
That's right. That's what made me think like maybe it's more like a real body, even if it's one that
yeah,
they build or grow,
yeah,
right? That having a host would even be an
yeah.
option.
So they would have
But
had to advance the android process like considerably, which is possible. Like they even back in Picard's
yeah,
time, we had androids who were better androids or better facsimiles of humans than Data
And
was.
data.
Um,
Yep.
so it's possible a lot of the internal systems are much more advanced and maybe can they can host biological forms inside of them like the symbiote. Maybe that's something that they've cracked in the last 800 years. It's just the consciousness, like transferring consciousness that was
Yeah, the
different. So
transfer.
I imagine that there's a fair amount of like citizens of the Federation who are androids, and they have bodies that are very similar to humans. It's just that they're androids. So that's the only way that you could explain that. But
And they grow old
and they die.
and they
Yes.
die. Like, important,
Yes.
right? So no extremely long lived.
Yeah, unless they're designed. I mean, unless they're designed
If-
elsewhere in another way. But I think maybe they. Well, you know what? Maybe they're after Data. Like immortality was a curse for him. He definitely wanted to die. So maybe they other androids. They even if they have longer lives, there's an eventual death. So they might have a lifespan of say a Vulcan or something like that, but they eventually are going to die. So
right. Yeah.
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 All right, so we jump back to the issue at hand, and we get some a sit down between Burnham and Saru talking about how to resolve the issue of gathering the data because Book is probably the most familiar with the ship, but he is also
Mm-hmm.
emotionally compromised for obvious reasons. So he advises, having a failsafe or someone in addition to Book on the ship. So we were talking before this live stream, and you said you don't really buy that Detmer couldn't handle it. You think they just added this basically for the drama of it all.
I mean, I think she could have done it. She's, a very capable pilot. She's uh um piloted his ship before, and yeah. But I guess maybe they needed this moment, to show him still. I mean, obviously, right? He's still going to be
Mm-hmm.
affected and wanting to be the person who helps figure it out, right? I can see like having that desire and that need to figure out what happened to your
Mm-hmm.
family. And I think he also felt in I think his conversation with Burnham that he could have saved
Right.
them, right? Even though obviously like
No. Yeah.
nobody could have
Yeah.
saved them, right? There's that irrational
Yeah.
desire to think you could have saved the day. But and I think it also provides a moment between him and Stamets, and you don't. I don't think you really see them. They don't interact much before
Right.
this, and so it gives them that opportunity. But it's like, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
Detmer. Uh,
Yes, she probably could have. She probably could have flown the ship. It wouldn't have been as interesting an episode though, because we get, like you say, the interplay between Book and Stamets. So here in the next scene,
mhm.
this is where uh, the captain suggests that they both go to the ship, and Stamets says that makes no sense because we're the only two who could actually fly the spore drive, and
Right.
he makes a joke about being pushed
Oh
out of
yeah, push out the
airlock.
airlock.
And everyone pauses. And he's like, "It was just a joke." So apparently he's let go of his anger because he was really upset at the end.
At the end of yeah, I wondered about that. I wondered if his anger would pop
Yeah,
up in some way, but it seems like he's been able to realize, and also everything worked out for the best, right? He got his family
right.
back. Uh, but he seems to have let go of that anger towards
Yeah,
Burnham and to make a joke about it. Even though they were both just like, ooh,
yeah,
like, we wouldn't joke
yeah,
about
yeah,
it, but I guess if you're okay with it, we're okay with
yeah.
it. So that,
Yeah,
Yeah.
because they were probably on pins and needles about it because like I said, he was really upset. I don't know. There are people I've seen people talk about this online, and there are some people who are happy that this didn't drag on, but I don't know. Maybe I like drama. I would have liked to see like a couple episodes where he's like being a little bit of a dick about it, and then they get through it. But I don't know. I guess we.
But I think also like this is, I mean, he is somebody who thrives on being the smartest
Mhm.
person in the room and being able to figure something out. And this is something, where he, when they're having this conversation, he's like, I don't
Yeah,
know. This is
yeah,
bizarre,
hmm,
right? And I think maybe that's a part of it. Like that's driving him. It's like, you have a problem. Your family is essentially still at
hmm,
risk, right? They've been saved once, but now you're back in
hmm.
it. You need to be here helping to figure this out. There's no time for
Yeah,
drama. Really, like, save that drama for when, you know, the universe is
yeah,
not going to be uh, torn to
yeah. That makes
pieces.
sense. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, he might have some personal issues, but he's a professional, right? So, and there's a problem in front of him, and he needs to. They're all Starfleet, and they need to solve the problem in front of them. So yeah, I get that. So yeah, after this conversation, they travel to the anomaly, and as we said, they send him with Book as a hologram, and again, we were talking about how Android technology has improved. Apparently, holographic technology has very much because he's getting like haptic feedback as well. He can actually feel um, um,
Yes.
the the environment there. He's not a ghost. He apparently doesn't have a smell uh,
Yeah.
because he tries to interact with the cat, and Book says she doesn't like holograms because she can't smell them, but he can feel, he can push, he can touch, and he can feel.
Yes.
So so that he's basically for all intents and purposes there, and some of the best parts of this episode are some of the back and forth with him and Book. So at first, like,
Mhm.
Book is not interested in talking to him. He's like,
It's very
yeah,
awkward. And like, there's nothing you can say to him that would make him feel
right.
better,
And and not only that, like he said, like Book said, is like in the last 6 months, you've probably said like 5 words to me. We don't have a
Yeah.
relationship like that. There's nothing you can really say to me. You're not close to me at all. But by the end of the ordeal,
Mhm.
they they come to an understanding because they do have the commonality of the fact that, because he tries to break the ice with the fact that they're the only two who can um, um,
Yeah.
drive the spore drive, and he's like, and Book is not really having it, but he does come around at the end, because
Yes.
he does
Yeah.
help.
And I also like he misread Stamets, right? Because he thought he was jealous of the fact that he could also power the spore
Right.
drive. And maybe it might have started out that way, but for him, he was like, no, like you did something I couldn't do. I was powerless to help my family.
Yeah.
And I think that, how do you, I can see him not knowing how to respond to somebody who
Who
saved,
saved
saved
his
his
family?
family.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, and yeah, that was some of the, like I said, some of the best things that we've had for Stamets. The fact that he was that vulnerable and said, he's so appreciative, and he's so appreciative that he was able to save his family when he wasn't able to. I think that definitely let him put his guard down, and he also said, I'm going to do everything in my power to
mhm.
figure this out for you. So yeah, this I look forward to them interacting in the
Yeah,
future.
yeah, yeah.
All right. So the other issue, though, is that apparently the anomaly is very unpredictable, and we get some issue. We get issues with gravity on the on the ship. We also talked about this before. So like this is obviously for dramatic effects because there are all kinds of fires here.
Yes. I'm like,
This is now
why? It's
like more than 1,000 years in the future from where we are right now. So it's like 930 years from where they are, but like where they started from was already like 200, 300 years in the future. So I feel like they should have better fire suppression. suppression.
right.
It also fail safes for
When you
when you
lose
lose
gravity.
gravity. At the very least, her chair should have some seatbelts. Uh, but
Yeah.
putting seatbelts in any of these chairs would make it all less like dramatic because they're every Star Trek iteration when the shit is hit, the actors go back and forth like this. You can't go. You can't.
Like, can we at least get seatbelts for like Detmer and Oo? Like, I feel like if nobody else is strapped in, those two, because they're not moving
Right.
about, right? Can we get at least a mechanism that activates
Yeah,
when
it
there
would have been
is
that would have yeah that would
disruption?
have made sense because they've actually the only place that they in Star Trek Nemesis there were seatbelts in
Mhm.
that movie and they cut that scene out. So it's still not canon that there are seatbelts in any of these ships, even though we have seatbelt technology.
Just a little lap
Yeah,
belt, just a little lap belt to something to, so your pilot isn't just
yeah,
like flung, far away. Like, yeah, I feel like
yeah,
I would be okay with that.
yeah. Because there was an actual specific point where I think she Burnham asked for an update and Owo's up in the air. She's like, I can't get to it. Like if they were strapped
Yeah,
in, she could. It was a little ridiculous, but it was a cool visual scene because they were all
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. It was
yeah,
definitely cool to see them like
yeah,
suspended
and they
like that, and then
it
but
kept getting dropped to the ground and getting
yeah,
very interesting. So almost everyone has like a cut or scrape. So we see the doctor going around repairing their abrasions and stuff. On the ship because he's on the bridge because he's
the br-
monitoring the situation, the emotional situation with Book as an advisor to the captain there.
yes, yeah. Um, yeah, so that was sort of interesting to see him like running around healing
Hmm.
people, like trying to stitch them back up in real
Yeah,
time.
and also he goes into I forget I don't know what this room is off the deck. It's not the ready room, but they do science in there. They've used it before, so like Adira and Tilly go in there, and he goes in there as well. And Adira
Cracked a rib.
cracked a rib, and they analyze some data, and I think they get a bit defensive about their work being checked. But Tilly's like, everyone's good here. Everyone checks everyone's work. Yeah.
Right, and that's important, right? Because I think even just having that conversation, I mean, you realize like there was something that she didn't like compensate for or account for, but by Tilly being like, "Did you check this? Did you
Yeah.
check that?" They realize, or they go and make the adjustment and
Right.
come back with, "Okay, we made this adjustment um, to the
Right.
algorithm." So there's, I think Adira it's just I think just learning and becoming more comfortable and understanding that people will question you, but it's not
It's not. They're not
a lack
challenging
of
you. Yeah.
trust. Right. It's not a
Right. Yeah.
challenge, right? It's more of a
Yeah.
conversation, and are we on the right page, or is there information that you weren't aware that you should have
Hmm.
had, right? Or something like
Right.
that. And so
Yeah.
yeah.
It was an interesting scene for a couple. So like, I think that in that scene, Adira is still learning, and they not need to kind of get over their insecurities, but also as we see at the end of the episode when Tilly has a conversation with Culber, she also snapped in a way that she wouldn't have done. That was uncharacteristic for her. as Culber says, you're
Oh,
as Culber says, she says that you have a very light touch, and he says, yeah, you usually do too. So what's going on? And apparently she still has some emotional issues that she's dealing with, maybe from Osira, because Burnham mentions Osira at the beginning of the last episode, and maybe that's what's going on with her. Like she's had some self doubt because Osira said you aren't much of a commander or whatever. So I guess we'll see what unfolds over the season, and I'm glad what they're doing is actually giving Culber more of that role of the counselor. We talked about this at the when we did the season review, and I'm glad that they actually are leaning into that. So I'm looking forward to those scenes because he does that very well. He does that's a really good function for him, and the actor Wilson Cruz performs that role in a very very clearly empathetic way. It really comes across that he would be very good in that role. So, yeah, he's one of my favorite characters on this show for many reasons. One of the reasons is that they give him the best uniforms. All his uniforms are always white, so his uniforms are always the best uniforms.
It's
doesn't matter what era. Doesn't matter what era.
Let me say, I love all of, and I think we've had a conversation before about the practicality of the uniforms and their footwear in particular. Yeah. But I just love that this look, and that when it's the same, right? It's unisex. They're not trying to do anything crazy. There are no weird skirts or anything like that. But it's just a gorgeous uniform. Everybody looks great, but this white uniform is just fire.
I'm not one of those people who buy Star Trek, because there are people who have like uniforms from almost every era, but if I buy a uniform, I'm going to buy the white doctor's uniform because it looks.
And I like the split length and the jacket, like it gives it.
It's very cool.
Yeah. And their boots are just no.
I haven't.
And can we also we'll talk a second for Tilly's hair. And I think I said this before, but I feel like there I don't know how much of it is deliberate or how much of it is not. But at the start of this episode, she has like perfectly, her curls are very structured in style, and you see them start to quite realistically,
right?
I think like frizz out as things like you've lost gravity,
right.
Things are exploding, like
it's not
hair responds to that. So, and I think we talked before, when she first started this show, she had this tight bun, and you've sort of seen her grow into this look where she has a ponytail, and I think in this shot, it starts to relax. But it's just interesting to see the way they style the characters, and Tilly's style is one that I love, and to see it sort of change throughout the seasons and also change within the episode. I feel like there's also like a story going on.
Yeah.
They're like start off like cool, well put together, I guess, and then as things get more dangerous,
Yeah, it makes sense, like you said. Like, her hair shouldn't be exactly in the same place, especially after being thrown up in the air and then thrust down. Like, Burnham's hair is actually tied back, so that's why her hair is sort of the same throughout this episode. But Tilly stopped tying her hair back in maybe the second season, maybe the third season. She stopped tying her hair back as much. So yeah, that's a more realistic representation of what.
I also remember Star Trek Next Generation. I forget if it was a documentary or something, but there was a sort of commentary around Gates McFadden, Dr. Beverly Crusher's hair. And remember, she had left the show for a while and came back. And like that was, I mean, I think there were other issues, but there was sort of like they didn't know her hair was problematic. And I was like, what about her hair could be so problematic that it created this
It's possible
tension.
that it was just
But
it was just
yeah,
curly.
but
It
it's
was curly,
exactly.
and
And I think
yeah,
that's what it like maintaining
yeah.
continuity is probably what they were trying to do and have it look the
Mm.
same throughout. Um, I think is what they were trying to do. So I think, but yeah, no, like hair can be very contentious if we let it be. So it's sort of just interesting to see how they choose to style characters and maybe tell a bit of their story through
Yeah, and
hair.
also, I mean, I guess what Richard it also speaks to how much effort they wanted to put into maintaining continuity. So, right? So, like,
I yeah.
imagine if her hair was an issue or it was problematic if they had a black woman as one of the main cast members. Like, I imagine she would have had a very terrible time as well, right? Like, um,
Yeah.
I guess they kept Jordy's hair pretty short, so you could that didn't have much of a continuity issue there. But yeah,
And every black woman on Next Generation had relaxed hair for
is
sure.
that true?
There was
Is that
a
the
lot
case?
of, I
Yeah,
think
yeah, you're right. You're right.
maybe
Yeah,
except Guinan.
yeah. Except for Guinan, because
But
yeah, she just had her hair. Yeah, they got around that by putting a headdress on her. So
yeah,
they didn't have any continuity issues with her hair because it was always covered. Because I can imagine that Whoopi Goldberg was going to cut her hair. I mean, she loved being part of Star Trek, but she was gonna cut her hair. Part of kind of signature part of her look. So yeah,
yeah.
I think at this point I was watching an episode of The View earlier this year because she put some things in her hair to play Mother Abigail in the movie. I forget what it was. Maybe it was The Shining.
Oh, Sister Act 3?
Sorry, no.
Wait, no.
Mother Abigail in the Stand. She was playing Mother Abigail, and they put like gray things in her hair, and she mentioned that at this point she would take it out, but like everyone knows her by her hair, so like ABC won't let her take her hair. She won't cut her hair. ABC won't let her cut her hair now. So yeah, it's funny.
Oh,
Anyway, back to the episode. All right, so there the anomaly, as you said, they do some analysis on anomaly, and it's happening on irregular intervals. So they had to move further away, and they at this point they have like a programmable matter tether connected to the ship, which they have to cut to get further distance away from the ship. At the same time, Book is seeing his nephew,
nephew. Yeah.
visions of his nephew, and this is where we have the the conversation that conversation where Stamets is trying to pull him out of it, but that doesn't really work, and Burnham has to talk him through it, right? And around this time as well, we get a suggestion from Bryce. Bryce suggests, based on his hobby, you said it was windsurfing? Or something?
Kite
Surf,
surfing,
kite
because
surf.
when they cut the tether and they leave
Right.
Book and Hollow Stamets there, they need to figure out a way to get them
Mm-hmm.
out, right? And they've also lost
Right.
navigation, so they can't navigate themselves out, and so um, they're all talking like
Tech,
you know
technobabble, basically.
very techno babble, and he's like, but basically what he says is they can ride a wave
Yeah.
out, like kite surfing, which is what he
Mm-hmm.
does, and they just needed to figure out how to time it and time the
Mm-hmm.
wave and getting Book um, to get out of
Yeah.
there, to get on the wave at the exact right
Right. And he
moment,
wouldn't be able to see it
or feel
or
it. Like
feel
it
it
would.
because but so what they do, so like Adira and Tilly create a model based upon his suggestion, and then
Hmm.
the Captain Burnham asks them to make it into programmable matter so she can feel it, and she can tell him
Right.
when to initiate. So he misses the first one because he's unsure of himself, and I think this is the
Yeah.
point
Like,
where it's almost like he wants to kill him. He wants to die, but the connection to the ship, that they can't send the data back, and I don't know whether or not Stamets was truthful about that or not, but they have to get out. And
Yeah. I hadn't considered that Stamets might have like sensed that he
willing
was,
to let go.
you know,
Yeah,
pretty willing to let
yeah,
go, and sort of because I was saying earlier, like maybe they didn't have, I guess, the bandwidth to transmit the data
yeah,
back, but it could also be that he realized like no,
yeah. He's
he's
just
gonna
gonna
just
let
go
he's
down
yeah
with.
he's not going to. Yeah, it's very possible. Like if Stamets wasn't there, it was a combination of things. Stamets was there. He didn't. His him being there didn't snap him out of it. Burnham also had to talk to him, but I think all those things
Mhm.
helped him push through, because if he was in the middle of the thing and he didn't have navigation, and he didn't think he could get out, and the data was already back on on on
On
Discovery,
Discovery.
I think he would have given up. And I
Hmm.
don't know whether or not the data, if it was an actually true that he couldn't send the data, because like the hologram was still active. And
Hmm.
as you said, the
That
hologram data might have been a lot less data than the data he was collecting. So maybe that's why the hologram was still active, because it was glitching. But it's very possible that he was just lying, because he saw that he was going to commit suicide. He
yeah,
was gonna give up.
basically.
So yeah,
And I imagine Book is also like feels some guilt, right? Survivor's
yeah, he
guilt
definitely feels
that
survivor skill, because
because he could have very well died with Quajon. He was knocked off, or I guess
mm-hmm,
away. The wave took him away from the
mm-hmm.
planet. Um, so I can imagine there's also like that, like why him, right? Why is
Get to
he
survive.
quite
Yeah,
possibly the only
yeah,
equation to survive? Because they do say like the Federation is like looking for anybody who might have been
yeah.
off planet at the time. Um, but yeah, so that
So
was
what do you think? So how do you think his story resolves at the end of this season? So like if they find other people, I can see them writing him in a way that he feels compelled to try to maintain his culture, like a little
mhm.
colony of people from Quajon. He feels compelled to be with his people instead of being on the ship. So what do you think for this season?
I would agree with that. I think I mean, if they do find other um, more of his
Mm-hmm.
people, that might be uh, what they also want to do. And they can't be that many. Although it did seem like there were quite a few of them in service to the Emerald Chain. So
Yeah.
maybe there are a few of them out there. But yeah, finding some place to
Mm-hmm.
resettle and reconnect
Yeah.
would, would probably be the most logical
Yeah, I mean,
thing.
you imagine that the Romulans lost a lot of people when their planet was destroyed as well, but they actually had a concerted evacuation plan, so they were
Right.
able to
Yeah.
maintain some of their culture. But
Yeah.
yeah, they're going to be holding on to threads even if they find a few dozen people who were off planet. So yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I also wonder, I mean, if there's any capacity. So was it season three? I forget which episode where you um oh gosh, I'm drawing a blank. The seed bank
Yeah.
that the Federation maintains. And I guess I just wonder what sort of capacity because we know they can
Mm-hmm.
terraforming is a thing, right? They can do
Mm-hmm.
that. And if there's the chance to rebuild a world, reseed it with
Like
the flora and
like a
fauna.
barren planet.
But and
Yeah.
but you
Yeah.
right, but you would obviously, need to um have stored genetic material or codes to be able to do that sort of thing. Like in terms of like rebuilding a world, if that is even an
It's yeah,
option.
it's unclear. It's
But,
unclear whether or not
but
the seed bank whether or not it would have had information from Quajon.
from
He
Quajon.
might
Yeah,
have information from Quajon since he was very connected to the.
he joined the
Yeah,
Federation.
yeah. So it's possible.
In case your planet gets blown to
Yeah.
bits,
So
right?
maybe they can rebuild with some of the natural things that is very important to their planet, really important to their culture rather. So I guess
Yeah,
we
I don't really see him joining Starfleet though.
yeah.
Like,
I,
yeah, I think before, right, when he had a home and a culture, I think there could have been a place for him and other people from
mhm.
Quajon in the Federation. But now
It
there's
would it
there's
would have been
nobody.
sticky though. He would have been if he joined Starfleet. He wouldn't necessarily have been assigned to the Discovery crew. Like it wouldn't have been up to Burnham to assign him. So right now,
But other couples have made it work before, right? Geordie LaForge was his mother was a captain and his dad was a science officer, I think, on different ships.
on different ships though, like no,
Right,
no,
that's
no.
what I
I didn't.
mean.
I
I
didn't
mean,
say
like
they
they,
would break up. He just wouldn't be a regular cast member on the show.
yeah, yeah.
Like yeah, I didn't say that they would break up. It's just it's unlike what we've seen of the TNG era. There are lots of people who are married within Starfleet, and actually, if you watch Lower Decks, Captain Freeman is married is married to an admiral, but they're in different places. They're stationed in different places. The admiral is I think probably it's Starfleet Command, and Captain Freeman is captaining the ship. So, but they. But yeah, they wouldn't be regular. You very rarely see the admiral on that show. It's mostly following the ship. So we wouldn't
Yeah.
see David Ajala very often. So I think one way or another, he's probably not going to be on the show as much in season 5. Whether or not it's
Hmm.
because he's rebuilding his culture or because he I don't know is trying to find purpose in Starfleet, in which case he's going to probably be assigned to another ship. I don't know. Maybe that's we were talking earlier about a spinoff for Saru. Maybe he'll be part of Saru's ship. I don't know. This, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So as we said, Saru advises Burnham to do connect to him and try to talk him out of it, talk him through it, and he actually manages to ride the wave on the second attempt out. Well, on the second attempt out, and then when he gets back to the Discovery, he admits that he wasn't ready. And also, I think this is also the scene where he says he says that he's guilty, like you said, like he could when he went to investigate, he could have taken them because they were right there, and that's what's weighing on him the most. He keeps seeing the little boy. He had just
Hmm.
started to reconnect with him, reconnect with his culture. He didn't really have a whole lot of hope for reconnecting with his culture, and the hope just was reignited by these connections,
Hmm.
and it's all lost now. So yeah, he's definitely going to be dealing with this for some time, throughout the season, and I appreciate that they are more realistic about that, in this show. Again, I feel like people complain about this, but like they're they are pining for something that was written in the 90s for syndication, where there was basically a reset at the end of the beginning of every episode, unless there was a two-part episode,
Right.
so that if someone watched an episode out of sequence, they wouldn't be lost. But
Hmm.
this is being distributed in a completely different way, so they can have very long arcs and they can treat
Yeah.
things in a more realistic way. Because I think we talked about this during our season 3 premiere a little bit, but like there was a lot of traumatic things that happened to Voyager, to Enterprise, and they don't talk about that stuff
Hmm.
at all. Like these people would definitely be dealing with trauma, and it's more realistic that the things linger with them. So
Hmm.
I really
Yeah.
appreciated them having the PTSD thing last season with Detmer, And this season, I think they're going to have at least Book deal with grief through the entire season, and Tilly deal with
Hmm.
whatever issues, maybe anxiety, maybe confidence issues that she's having uh, in the season as well. So yeah, I appreciate that, and I look forward to that, because that's a more realistic representation of how how humans work. Yeah,
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
heroes, that's even people who do heroic things. They have feelings and emotions. They don't turn them off. They're not androids. They don't have the on and off switch like Data did, in the original, in the TNG era. So that's pretty much the end of the episode. I don't. Am I missing anything? I think that's.
Uh, well, oh well. Then I mean, there's just a
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
realization
This conversation.
between
Yeah.
Crystal and Billy, where I mean, they knew that the anomaly was large. I think they
Mm-hmm.
say 5 light years. They gather the data until he like pulls up this hologram showing
Yeah.
I think it's the
Yeah. It shifted.
direction that the
Shifted.
anomaly
Yeah.
is moving in before they got there, and then after they get there and they
Mm-hmm.
realize it shifted, and that the data that they
Be useless.
collected
Yeah.
might
Might be
be
useless.
useless, right? That they can't predict. Maybe they can't use it to predict where the
Right.
anomaly is going to go, um,
Yeah.
which is interesting. It did make me wonder if uh, it
That's
isn't
what I thought too.
natural. Like
Yeah,
if
that it's
there's
not a
something
natural occurrence. Like it's someone is
directing
like it's
it.
some intelligence
Yeah,
is controlling it. If it's not, if they're not if they gather that much data and they can't extrapolate out using their knowledge of physics to extrapolate what's going to happen, then it makes me think that there's some sort of intelligence behind this. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
which I guess we will see.
So
Yeah, yeah.
right, we will see.
All right, so
Um,
that is what we think of the episode, but we are interested to hear what you guys think. So please comment down below, like and subscribe for more content like this, and we will see you next time. Thanks. Bye, guys.